The email arrived at 11:47 p.m. on a Sunday night. Subject line: Monday morning meeting, attendance optional. I stared at my phone screen, the blue light harsh in my dark bedroom, reading it 3 times to make sure I understood what I was seeing. The Monday morning strategy meeting, the one I'd been leading for the past 8 years, was now optional for me. Optional. The meeting I'd created from scratch back in 2016. The meeting where we planned the entire week's operations for the commercial accounts division. The meeting that literally couldn't function without me because I was the only one who understood the full scope of our client relationships, the intricate web of contracts, the delicate balance of competing priorities. Optional. I took a screenshot, saved it to a folder on my personal cloud drive labeled Documentation 2024. Then I went to bed, but I didn't sleep. I just lay there in the dark, staring at the ceiling, feeling the weight of what was coming. My name is Catherine "Cat" Morrison. I'm 43 years old, and until 7 months ago, I was the Senior Director of Commercial Accounts at Pinnacle Financial Services in Charlotte, North Carolina. For 12 years, I managed a portfolio of 247 commercial clients representing $680 million in annual revenue. I'd built that portfolio from 89 clients and $240 million when I started back in 2012. I'd personally brought in 158 new accounts through networking, referrals, and old-fashioned relationship building. I had a client retention rate of 97.3%, the highest in the company's 35-year history. I'd mentored 14 junior account managers, 7 of whom had been promoted to senior positions. I'd won the company's Excellence Award 4 times: 2015, 2017, 2020, and 2022. I'd never received a performance review below exceptional. Never. Not once in 12 years. I'd also never been late to a meeting, never missed a deadline, never lost a major client due to service failures. I'd worked through my mother's cancer treatments because clients needed me. I'd taken calls from the hospital waiting room while she was in surgery. I'd taken calls on my honeymoon because a $40 million account was having contract issues that couldn't wait. I'd missed my son's first steps because I was closing a deal in Atlanta. I'd skipped my daughter's dance recital because a client emergency came up. I'd given everything to Pinnacle Financial. My time, my energy, my family moments, my health, all of it. And now my meetings were optional. I knew exactly why. His name was Trevor Whitmore. Age 31. Vice President of Client Services. Also known as the founder's nephew. Also known as the most spectacularly incompetent person to ever hold an executive title at Pinnacle Financial Services. Trevor had been promoted 6 months earlier, placed directly above me in the organizational chart despite having 0 experience in commercial accounts, 0 background in financial services beyond a summer internship at his uncle's company when he was 22, and 0 qualifications beyond sharing DNA with Marcus Whitmore, the man who'd founded Pinnacle Financial 35 years ago. Trevor's previous job? Business Development Associate at his uncle's country club in Kiowa Island. His responsibilities? Planning golf tournaments and managing the club's Instagram account. Before that, 2 years at a marketing startup in Austin that went bankrupt after burning through $3 million in venture capital. Before that, a bachelor's degree in communications from a small private college in South Carolina where his father sat on the board of trustees, followed by 3 years of finding himself in Southeast Asia, which apparently meant posting beach photos on social media and doing yoga retreats. This was the man who was now my boss. This was the man who decided my meetings were optional. I'd seen this pattern before. I'd watched it happen to colleagues at other companies. I'd seen it happen to my friend Rachel at her law firm. I'd seen it happen to my former mentor David at his consulting company. The slow erosion of responsibilities. The gradual exclusion from important conversations. The subtle undermining of authority. The death by 1,000 cuts. It had a name: quiet firing. The practice of making someone's job so miserable, so diminished, so unbearable that they quit on their own, saving the company from having to pay severance or risk a wrongful termination lawsuit. Trevor was trying to quietly fire me. What he didn't know, what he couldn't have known, was that I'd been documenting everything since the day he arrived. Every email, every conversation, Every slight, every exclusion, every false accusation. I'd been building a case without even fully realizing I was doing it. If you've ever felt like you were being pushed out of a job you'd earned, like your contributions were being erased while you watched, like you were going crazy because everyone else seemed to accept the narrative that you were the problem, make sure to like and subscribe. I share real stories about workplace politics, corporate manipulation, and what happens when you fight back with evidence instead of emotion. These stories might just save your career someday. Let me take you back to the beginning. 6 months earlier, November 14th, 2023, a Tuesday, Marcus Whitmore called an all-hands meeting at 9 a.m. The entire client services division, about 60 people, crammed into the main conference room on the 3rd floor. The room smelled like coffee and anxiety. Marcus stood at the front, wearing his usual navy suit and red tie, smiling that practiced CEO smile that never quite reached his eyes. "I have exciting news," he said, his voice booming with artificial enthusiasm. "We're expanding our leadership team to position ourselves for the next phase of growth. I'm pleased to announce that Trevor Whitmore will be joining us as Vice President of Client Services, effective immediately." Trevor stepped forward from where he'd been standing against the wall. Tall, maybe 6 feet 2 inches, athletic build maintained by an expensive gym membership, wearing a suit that probably cost $3,000, perfect hair styled with some kind of product that made it look casually tousled, confident smile that showed too many teeth. He looked like he'd been cast for the role of successful executive in a corporate training video. "Thanks, Uncle Marcus, Marcus." Nervous laughter rippled through the crowd. He grinned, like the slip-up was charming instead of revealing. "I'm really excited to be here. I've been watching Pinnacle Financial from the outside for years, and I've seen so much potential for growth. I'm looking forward to bringing fresh perspectives and innovative strategies to take us to the next level." Fresh perspectives. Innovative strategies. Take us to the next level. Corporate buzzword bingo. I almost laughed, but the sound died in my throat when I saw the expression on Patricia Chen's face. I glanced around the room. My colleagues looked confused. We already had a VP of Client Services, Patricia Chen, who'd been in the role for 9 years. She was sitting in the front row, her face carefully neutral, but I could see the tension in her shoulders, the way her hands were clasped too tightly in her lap. Patricia will be transitioning to a strategic advisory role, Marcus continued, which was corporate speak for we're pushing her aside but not technically firing her. She'll be focusing on long-term planning and special projects. Trevor will handle day-to-day operations and drive our growth initiatives moving forward. Day-to-day operations. The thing Patricia had been doing flawlessly for 9 years. The thing that had led to 23% revenue growth and the highest client satisfaction scores in the industry. After the meeting, I caught Patricia in the hallway outside the conference room. People were streaming past us, heading back to their desks, whispering to each other. "Are you okay?" I asked quietly. She smiled, but it was tight, brittle. "I'm fine. It's time for new leadership. Fresh blood, you know." "Did you know this was coming?" "I got 2 days' notice. Marcus called me into his office on Sunday afternoon." She lowered her voice, glancing around to make sure no one was listening. "Kat, be careful. Marcus is grooming Trevor to take over the company eventually. He wants to keep it in the family. Anyone who gets in the way of that narrative, anyone who makes Trevor look bad by comparison, is going to be a problem. I'm not in anyone's way. I just do my job." "That's what I thought too." She squeezed my arm, her grip almost painful. "Document everything. Every conversation, every decision, every email. Every single thing. Trust me on this." I didn't understand what she meant. Not then. Not fully. Trevor's first week was a masterclass in confident incompetence. He scheduled back-to-back meetings with every department head, asking questions that revealed he didn't understand basic financial services concepts. He kept referring to customers instead of clients, a small distinction that matters enormously in our industry. He talked about scaling our social media presence and building brand awareness when we were a B2B financial services firm whose clients were Fortune 500 companies, not consumers scrolling Instagram. He suggested we gamify the client experience without understanding that our clients were CFOs and treasury managers and risk officers, serious people managing serious money who would be insulted by the suggestion. But he said everything with such confidence, such certainty, such unwavering self-assurance that people who didn't know better might have thought he knew what he was talking about. I had my first one-on-one meeting with him on his third day, November 17th, 2:30 p.m. I'd blocked out an hour on his calendar. I brought a comprehensive portfolio overview, client list organized by revenue and industry, detailed revenue figures, retention rates broken down by client segment, growth projections for the next 3 quarters, risk assessments for our top 20 accounts. Cat, right? He said when I walked into his office. He didn't stand. Didn't shake my hand. Just gestured vaguely at the chair across from his desk. Patricia's old desk. He'd already redecorated. The family photos were gone, Patricia's husband and 3 kids, smiling from various vacation spots. The awards were gone. The plants were gone. Everything that made the office feel human was gone, replaced by abstract art that looked expensive but meaningless and motivational posters with phrases like disrupt or die and innovation is everything. Catherine. Or Cat. Either is fine. Cool. So, walk me through what you do here. I spent 20 minutes explaining the commercial accounts division. Our structure, our processes, our client segmentation strategy, our growth initiatives. He interrupted constantly. Why do we have so many small accounts? Shouldn't we focus on the big fish? We have 247 accounts. Only 31 of them are under $1 million annually. The rest range from $1.5 million to $12 million. They're all profitable, and many of the smaller accounts have significant growth potential. Yeah, but think about efficiency. If we cut the bottom 20% and focused on landing a few whale accounts, we could probably double revenue with half the work. The bottom 20% represents $47 million in annual revenue. And our retention rate is 97.3% because we provide excellent service to all clients, regardless of size. That reputation is why we can land the larger accounts. They know we won't abandon them if they have a bad quarter. He waved his hand dismissively, like I was explaining something tediously obvious. Legacy thinking. We need to disrupt our own model before someone else does. That's what they taught us at Stanford. He hadn't gone to Stanford. I'd looked him up on LinkedIn, but I didn't correct him. Our model is working, I said carefully. We've grown revenue by 23% over the past 3 years while maintaining industry-leading retention rates. Past performance doesn't guarantee future results. He said it like he was quoting something profound. We need to be more agile, more innovative, more willing to take risks. I left that meeting with a knot in my stomach. A cold, heavy feeling that something was very wrong. I went back to my office, closed the door, and wrote down everything he'd said, word for word, while it was fresh in my memory. I noted the date, the time, the duration of the meeting. Then I saved it to my personal cloud drive in a folder I created called Trevor Documentation. I didn't know why I was doing it. Just instinct. Just Patricia's warning echoing in my head. Document everything. The changes started small. Little things that individually seemed insignificant, easy to dismiss as miscommunication or oversight, but collectively formed a pattern. Week 2, Trevor started CCing himself on all my client emails. Not asking to be included, just adding himself to every thread without explanation. When clients replied, he'd sometimes respond before I could, giving advice that contradicted our established protocols or made promises we couldn't keep. I'd have to send follow-up emails clarifying or walking back what he'd said, which made me look disorganized. Week 3, he scheduled a commercial account strategy session and invited my entire team, all 15 people. But he sent my invitation separately, 30 minutes after everyone else's, with a note, "Feel free to attend if your schedule allows." As if my attendance at a strategy session for my own division was optional. Week 4, he reassigned one of my major accounts, Hartwell Industries, $8.3 million annually, a client I'd personally brought in 4 years ago and had nurtured through 2 CEO transitions and a major restructuring. He gave it to Derek Chin, a junior account manager who'd been with the company for 18 months. Derek was smart and hardworking, but he wasn't ready for an account that size. When I asked Trevor about it in a private meeting, he said, "Derek's hungry. He's got fresh energy. Sometimes you need new blood on important accounts. No offense, but you've been doing this a long time. Maybe you're getting a little comfortable. Comfortable. Like my experience was a liability instead of an asset." I documented all of it. Screenshots of emails with timestamps. Notes from conversations with dates and times. Names of witnesses who were present. I created a detailed spreadsheet tracking every account reassignment, every excluded meeting, every responsibility that was taken away. By December, the pattern was undeniable. Trevor was systematically removing me from my own responsibilities while simultaneously increasing my workload with administrative tasks that served no real purpose. He asked me to create detailed reports on client communication patterns, how often we contacted each client, through what channels, at what times of day, then never read them. He requested I audit 8 years of account files for compliance purposes, a project that would take months and served no actual business purpose since we'd just completed a compliance audit 6 months earlier. Meanwhile, he was giving my strategic work, the client relationship management, the negotiation of contract renewals, the handling of escalated issues to junior staff who weren't ready for it. And when they struggled, when they made mistakes, he'd blame me for not training them properly. My team noticed. Sarah Martinez, one of my senior account managers who'd been with me for 5 years, came to my office in early December. She closed the door behind her. "Kat, what's going on?" "Trevor just asked me to take over the Apex financial renewal negotiation. That's a $6.2 million account. You've been managing that relationship for 7 years. You know the CFO personally. Why would he take you off it?" "I don't know, Sarah." "Did you ask to be taken off it?" "No." "Then why?" She stopped, studying my face. "He's trying to push you out." "Maybe." "That's insane. You're the best director we have. Your numbers are better than anyone's. Clients love you. The team loves you. What's his problem?" I didn't have an answer. Or rather, I had an answer I didn't want to say out loud. His problem was that I made him look bad. I made it obvious that he didn't know what he was doing. My competence highlighted his incompetence. "Sarah, I need you to do me a favor. If Trevor gives you any of my accounts, document everything. Every instruction he gives you, every decision he makes, every interaction with the client. Keep detailed records." "Can you do that?" She looked at me for a long moment. "You're building a case." "I'm protecting myself." "Good. Because this is bullshit." She paused at the door. "For what it's worth, the whole team knows what's happening. We all see it. And we're all on your side." That almost made me cry. But I held it together until she left. The first negative performance review came in January. Trevor scheduled it for 4:30 p.m. on a Friday, a time specifically chosen to be demoralizing, to ruin my weekend, to make sure I'd spend 2 days stewing in anxiety before I could talk to anyone about it. I sat across from him in his office. He had a folder in front of him. Official company letterhead. My name on the tab. The sight of it made my stomach drop. "Kat, I wanted to touch base about your performance over the past quarter." "Okay. I have some concerns." He opened the folder, made a show of reviewing the contents. "Your client communication has been inconsistent. I've received feedback that you're not as responsive as you used to be." "From which clients?" "I can't disclose that. But it's a pattern I'm seeing across multiple accounts. Trevor, my average response time is 2.3 hours during business hours. I track it in the CRM system. I can show you the data. It's not just about response time. It's about quality of engagement. Clients want to feel valued, not just serviced. My retention rate is 97.3%. My client satisfaction scores average 4.8 out of 5. If clients didn't feel valued, they'd leave. Retention isn't everything. We need to focus on growth. And frankly, your growth numbers have been stagnant. I brought in 11 new accounts last quarter, representing $23 million in annual revenue. That's below target. The target was 10 accounts. I exceeded it by 10%. He shifted in his seat, clearly annoyed that I was pushing back with facts. The target has been adjusted. We're expecting more aggressive growth going forward. I'm also concerned about your team leadership. I've heard complaints that you're not delegating effectively, that you're micromanaging. From who? Again, I can't disclose sources. But the feedback is consistent. This was gaslighting. Pure, calculated gaslighting. He was making vague accusations with no evidence, no specifics, no way for me to defend myself or improve. I'd like to see the written feedback, I said calmly. It was verbal. Then I'd like to speak with the people who provided it so I can understand their concerns and address them. That's not how this works, Kat. I'm trying to help you improve. But I need you to be receptive to feedback instead of defensive. I took a breath, stayed calm, kept my voice level. I appreciate the feedback. Can you provide specific, actionable examples of what I should do differently? Just be more proactive, more engaged, show more initiative, take ownership. Meaningless platitudes. Nothing actionable, nothing measurable. Just vague criticism designed to create a paper trail of poor performance. He slid a document across the desk. I need you to sign this performance improvement plan. It outlines the areas where you need to improve over the next 90 days. I read it. It was full of subjective goals: improve client satisfaction, demonstrate stronger leadership, increase proactive communication, show greater adaptability to change. Nothing with concrete metrics. Nothing I could actually prove I'd achieved or failed to achieve. I'd like to take this to HR before I sign it, I said. His jaw tightened. A muscle twitched in his cheek. That's not necessary. This is a standard PAP. Everyone gets them occasionally. Then HR won't have any problem with me reviewing it with them first. Kat, I'm trying to help you here. If you're not willing to accept feedback, if you're going to be combative about I'm not being combative. I'm being thorough. I want to make sure I understand exactly what's expected of me so I can meet those expectations. I'll review this with HR and get back to you next week. I stood up, took the document, and walked out before he could respond. I went straight to my car, sat in the parking lot, and cried for 10 minutes. Just sat there with my hands on the steering wheel, tears running down my face, feeling like everything I'd built was crumbling. Then I dried my eyes, drove home, scanned the entire PAP document, and saved it to my cloud drive. Then I wrote a detailed summary of the conversation, including every accusation Trevor had made, every response I'd given, every vague and unmeasurable goal he'd set. Then I called a lawyer. Her name was Jennifer Okafor, employment law specialist. I'd found her through a friend who'd gone through a wrongful termination case 3 years earlier. She had a small practice in downtown Charlotte, just her and 2 associates, but she had a reputation for being fierce and thorough. We met at a coffee shop on Saturday morning. Neutral ground. I brought printed copies of everything I'd documented: emails, meeting notes, the PAP, my performance history, my client retention data, my revenue numbers, witness statements from team members. She read through it all, taking notes on a yellow legal pad. When she finished, she looked up at me with an expression I couldn't quite read. "This is textbook constructive dismissal," she said. "What does that mean?" "It means they're trying to force you to quit by making your working conditions intolerable. It's illegal, but it's hard to prove unless you have extensive documentation." "Which you do." She tapped the stack of papers. "This is excellent. You've been incredibly thorough. Most people don't think to document things until it's too late. What should I do?" "Keep documenting. Everything. Every email, every conversation, every meeting you're excluded from, every responsibility that's taken away, every false accusation. If he gives you another negative review, document it. If he writes you up for anything, document it. Get witness statements from colleagues when possible. Build an airtight case. And then what? Then, when he tries to fire you, and he will try to fire you, probably within the next few months, you present all of this to HR and threaten legal action. Most companies will settle rather than go to court, especially when the evidence is this clear. You'll likely get a severance package, a neutral reference, and enough money to tide you over while you find a new position. I don't want to leave. I love my job. I love my clients. I love my team." She gave me a sympathetic look. "I know. But realistically, once this pattern starts, it rarely reverses. The person doing the quiet firing usually has political protection. In this case, he's the founder's nephew. Even if you win the immediate battle, you'll lose the long-term war. The best outcome is usually a settlement that compensates you fairly and allows you to leave with your reputation intact. I didn't want to believe her. I wanted to believe that if I just worked harder, performed better, proved my value beyond any doubt, Trevor would back off. That reason would prevail. That competence would matter. But deep down, I knew she was right. Before I tell you what happened next, you might be wondering how someone can get away with this kind of behavior in a professional environment. That's exactly what I'll be covering in next week's video, so make sure you're subscribed. February was worse. Trevor stopped inviting me to executive meetings entirely. I found out about major decisions, changes to client contract terms, new pricing structures, strategic partnerships from my own team members who heard about them secondhand from other departments. He also started criticizing my work publicly. In team meetings with 15 people present, he'd say things like, "Kat, I noticed you didn't follow up on the Meridian account issue. That's the kind of responsiveness we need to improve." Never mind that I'd followed up 3 times and resolved the issue 2 days earlier. When I pointed this out, he'd say, "Oh, I must have missed that email." But the damage was done. My team had heard him criticize me. My authority was undermined. He reassigned 4 more of my major accounts to junior staff. When those accounts started having problems, missed deadlines, communication errors, contract disputes, he blamed me for not training my team properly, for not creating adequate documentation, for not establishing clear processes. The second negative performance review came in March. This time, he had specific complaints. "You failed to attend the Strategic Planning Summit on March 8th. I wasn't invited. You should have asked to be included. That shows initiative. You failed to complete the Q1 compliance audit on time. You assigned that project to me on March 15th with a March 20th deadline. It required reviewing 8 years of files for 247 accounts. That's physically impossible. You need to manage your time better. Delegate more effectively. 3 clients have complained about service quality in your division." Which clients? What were their specific complaints? I can't disclose that, but it's concerning. Every accusation was either false, misleading, or based on impossible standards. And every time I defended myself with facts and data, he framed it as me being resistant to feedback or not taking responsibility or making excuses. He gave me a second PP. 90 more days to improve performance. I took it to Jennifer. "This is good," she said. "Good. For your case." He's escalating, which means he's getting impatient. He wants you gone, and he's building a paper trail to justify firing you. But his paper trail is sloppy. These accusations are vague and contradictory. When we present your documentation alongside his, it'll be obvious what he's doing. When do I go to HR? Not yet. Wait until he makes his move. If you go too early, they might just smooth things over temporarily, move you to a different department, give you a lateral transfer. You want to catch him in the act of trying to terminate you. That's when you have maximum leverage. So I waited. And I documented. And I watched my career, everything I'd built over 12 years, slowly dismantled. April brought a new tactic: public humiliation. Trevor started scheduling performance check-ins in open areas, the break room, the main office floor, where other employees could overhear. He'd criticize my work loudly enough that people would turn and stare. "Kat, I need you to redo the Hartwell proposal. This isn't up to our standards." What specifically needs to be changed? Just make it better. More professional. More polished. He also started excluding me from client meetings. Clients I'd worked with for years would show up for scheduled appointments, and Trevor would meet with them instead. When clients asked for me, he'd tell them I was transitioning to other responsibilities or focusing on internal projects. One client, Linda Pacheco, CFO of Silverstone Manufacturing, a $9.4 million account I'd managed for 6 years, called me directly on my cell phone. "Kat, what the hell is going on? I had a meeting scheduled with you yesterday, and some guy named Trevor showed up instead. He didn't know anything about our account history. He couldn't answer basic questions about our contract terms. He tried to upsell me on services we don't need and couldn't explain the ones we already have. I'm sorry, Linda. There's been some organizational restructuring. I don't want to work with him. I want to work with you. You know our business. You understand our needs. You've been there for us through 2 acquisitions and a major system migration. This Trevor guy is a joke. I'll talk to him. If this is how Pinnacle is going to operate going forward, I'm going to start looking at other providers. And I'll tell you right now, I'm not the only one. I've talked to 3 other CFOs who work with you, and they're all saying the same thing. Something's changed, and not for the better. My stomach dropped. Please don't do that. Let me fix this. I went straight to Trevor's office. He was on his phone, feet up on his desk, laughing about something. I need to talk to you about Silverstone Manufacturing. He held up a finger. Kept talking on his phone for another 2 minutes while I stood there. Finally hung up. What about Silverstone? Linda Pacheco called me. She's unhappy with the service she received yesterday. She's threatening to leave. That's because you've been coddling her. She needs to understand that we have processes now. She can't just demand special treatment because she's been here a long time. She's not demanding special treatment. She's asking for the same level of service she's received for 6 years. She's asking for someone who understands her account, who knows her business, who can answer her questions. Then maybe you should have documented things better so other people could handle it. I have documented everything. It's all in the CRM system. But documentation doesn't replace relationship management. These are people, Trevor. They want to work with people they trust. That's old school thinking. We need scalable systems, not personality-dependent relationships. What happens if you get hit by a bus? The whole thing falls apart. What happens is that someone who's been properly trained and mentored takes over, not someone who's thrown into it with no preparation. He stood up, his face flushing. Kat, I'm going to be honest with you. I don't think you're adapting well to the new direction of this company. You're stuck in old patterns. You're resistant to change. And frankly, your attitude is becoming a problem. My attitude? You question every decision I make. You push back on new initiatives. You undermine my authority with the team. You go behind my back to clients. I've never undermined you. I've asked questions and provided context based on 12 years of experience. And I didn't go behind your back, Linda called me. That's exactly what I'm talking about. You think your experience makes you right about everything. But experience can also make you blind to new possibilities. Sometimes the person who's been doing something the longest is the least qualified to see how it should change. I stared at him. This 31-year-old man with 0 relevant experience was telling me that my 12 years of proven success made me blind. Is there anything else? I asked quietly. No, that's all. I walked out, went to my office, closed the door, and wrote down every word of that conversation while my hands were still shaking. Then I called Linda Pacheco back and personally handled her account needs, despite Trevor's objections. I wasn't going to let a client leave because of his incompetence. 3 days later, Trevor sent me a formal written warning for insubordination and failure to follow chain of command. I saved it to my cloud drive. Sent a copy to Jennifer. Her response came within an hour. He's getting desperate. Won't be long now. Stay strong. May 12th. That was the day Trevor made his final move. He called me into his office at 9 a.m. HR Director Karen Walsh was there, sitting in one of the chairs across from his desk. That's when I knew. That's when my heart started pounding and my mouth went dry. Kat, please sit down, Karen said. Her voice was gentle. Practiced. The voice of someone who'd done this many times before. I sat, folded my hands in my lap, stayed calm. This was it. This was the moment I'd been preparing for. We need to discuss your continued performance issues, Trevor began. He had a folder in front of him, thicker than before. Despite 2 performance improvement plans and multiple conversations about areas for improvement, we haven't seen the progress we need. Your client satisfaction scores have declined. Your team leadership has been inconsistent. And your resistance to new processes and directives has created friction across the department. Every word was a lie. But he said it with such confidence, such authority, such conviction. Based on these ongoing issues, and after careful consideration, We've made the decision to terminate your employment, effective immediately. There it was. The words I'd been expecting for months. They still hit like a punch to the stomach. I see, I said calmly. Can I ask what specific performance metrics I failed to meet? Trevor and Karen exchanged a glance. It's not about specific metrics, Trevor said. It's about overall fit and performance trajectory. Sometimes people just aren't the right fit for where a company is heading. So there are no specific, measurable failures you can point to? Kat, we've been over this multiple times, Trevor said, his voice getting harder, more impatient. You've received extensive feedback over the past 6 months. Feedback, yes, but no specific, measurable performance failures. My client retention rate is still 97.3%. I brought in $23 million in new business last quarter. I've never missed a deadline that was actually achievable. My client satisfaction scores average 4.8 out of 5. So I'm asking, what specific metric did I fail to meet that justifies termination? Karen cleared her throat. Kat, we understand this is difficult. We're prepared to offer you a severance package, 4 weeks of pay, plus accrued vacation time. We'll also provide a neutral reference for future employment. For weeks. For 12 years of service. For $680 million in managed accounts. For a 97.3% retention rate. I'd like to propose an alternative, I said. I reached into my bag, a leather tote I'd brought specifically for this purpose, and pulled out a folder. A thick folder. Actually, 2 thick folders. I placed them on Trevor's desk. What's this? He asked, his voice suddenly uncertain. Documentation. 6 months of emails, meeting notes, witness statements, and performance data. It shows a clear pattern of constructive dismissal. It shows that every negative performance review you gave me was based on false or misleading information. It shows that you systematically removed my responsibilities, excluded me from meetings, reassigned my accounts to junior staff, and created impossible standards designed to make me fail. I pulled out a second folder. This folder contains statements from 5 clients, including Linda Pacheco of Silverstone Manufacturing, attesting to the quality of my work and expressing serious concerns about the service they've received since you took over their accounts. It also contains my actual performance data, client retention rates, revenue growth, client satisfaction surveys, awards, commendations. All of which directly contradict your claims. Trevor's face had gone pale. Karen was staring at the folders like they might explode. I also have a letter from my attorney outlining the legal basis for a constructive dismissal lawsuit. Constructive dismissal occurs when an employer makes working conditions so intolerable that an employee is forced to resign, or when an employer systematically undermines an employee to justify termination. Both of which apply here. I looked directly at Trevor. You tried to quietly fire me because you wanted me gone but didn't want to deal with the legal consequences of wrongful termination. You thought if you made my job miserable enough, I'd quit on my own. But I didn't quit. And I documented everything. Karen picked up the first folder and started reading. Her expression changed as she flipped through pages, emails with Trevor's vague accusations, my detailed responses with data, witness statements from team members, client testimonials. Kat, she said carefully, can you give us a moment? I need to discuss this with Trevor privately. Of course. I stood up. I'll be in my office. Take all the time you need. I walked out, leaving both folders on Trevor's desk, and went back to my office. My hands were shaking. My heart was pounding. But I'd done it. I'd played my hand. Now I just had to wait. I sat in my office for 2 hours. I couldn't focus on anything. Just stared at my computer screen, refreshing my email every 30 seconds, jumping every time I heard footsteps in the hallway. Finally, at 11:23 a.m., Karen called me back to Trevor's office. Trevor wasn't there. Just Karen and another man I recognized as David Brennan, Pinnacle Financial's general counsel. That was a good sign. They were taking this seriously. Ms. Morrison, David said, thank you for your patience. We've reviewed your documentation, and we'd like to discuss a resolution. I'm listening. First, I want to be clear that Pinnacle Financial does not admit to any wrongdoing or liability. However, in the interest of avoiding prolonged legal proceedings that would be costly and distracting for all parties, We're prepared to offer you a settlement. He slid a document across the desk. I read it carefully. 12 months of salary, $180,000. Full benefits continuation for 1 year. A neutral reference letter. A non-disparagement agreement. And a confidentiality clause preventing me from discussing the terms of my departure. What about Trevor? I asked. Karen and David exchanged a glance. Mr. Whitmore's employment status is an internal personnel matter, David said carefully. So he stays and I leave. He gets to keep destroying careers, and I get paid to go away quietly. Ms. Morrison, this is a generous offer. I want him fired. Silence. Heavy, uncomfortable silence. That's not, David began. He's incompetent. He's cost this company clients. He's demoralized the entire commercial accounts division. And he's created massive legal liability. If I can build this case against him, how many other employees can do the same? How many other people has he quietly fired or tried to push out? More silence. I want him fired, I repeated. And I want my position back. Not as senior director. As vice president of commercial accounts. The position he should never have had. That's not possible, Karen said. Then I'll see you in court. And I'll make sure every client in my portfolio knows exactly why I'm leaving and who's responsible. I wonder how many of them will stay. I stood up. Wait, David said. Let me make a call. He stepped out of the office. Karen and I sat in uncomfortable silence for 10 minutes. Then David came back. Mr. Whitmore would like to speak with you. Marcus Whitmore, the founder. 3 hours later, I was sitting in Marcus Whitmore's office on the top floor. Corner office with views of the Charlotte skyline. The office where all the big decisions were made. He looked older than I remembered. Tired. There were lines around his eyes I hadn't noticed before. Ms. Morrison, he said. I owe you an apology. I didn't respond. Just waited. I made a mistake. A serious mistake. I thought I was helping my nephew. Giving him an opportunity. Teaching him the business. I didn't realize he was. He trailed off, shook his head. I didn't realize he was doing this to you. To others. There are others? Patricia Chin has also come forward with documentation. Similar pattern. And 2 other employees have filed formal complaints with HR in the past month. All describing the same behavior. 4 people. Trevor had tried to quietly fire 4 people in 6 months. I'm removing Trevor from his position, effective immediately, Marcus continued. He'll be transitioning out of the company over the next 2 weeks. And I'd like to offer you the vice president role. Full salary adjustment to $220,000, expanded responsibilities overseeing all of commercial accounts, and a formal written apology from this company acknowledging that the performance reviews you received were inaccurate and have been expunged from your record. I thought about it. Thought about everything I'd been through. Everything I'd documented. Everything I'd fought for. I want $250,000, I said. And I want a 3-year contract with termination protections, meaning I can only be fired for cause, with cause clearly defined. And I want a formal company-wide email acknowledging that the performance reviews Trevor gave me were inaccurate and have been removed from my file. And I want Patricia Chin brought back in a meaningful role, not pushed aside. Marcus looked at David. David nodded slowly. Done, Marcus said. All of it. He extended his hand. I shook it. I started as vice president of commercial accounts on June 1st, 2024. Trevor was gone by then. I heard through the office grapevine that Marcus had given him a consulting position at another company he owned, basically a way to save face while getting him out of Pinnacle Financial. I didn't care. He was gone. That's what mattered. My first act as VP was to meet with every member of the commercial accounts team individually. 15 meetings over 3 days. I apologized for the chaos of the past 6 months. I returned accounts to the people who should have been managing them. I reinstated the Monday morning strategy meetings. I asked for their feedback on what needed to change. I also met with Linda Pacheco and every other client who'd expressed concerns. I personally assured them that Pinnacle Financial was committed to the relationship-based service model they valued. Most of them stayed. 2 left anyway, the damage was done. But most stayed. Patricia Chin came back too. Not to her old VP role. I had that now, but as Senior Director of Strategic Accounts, a position we created specifically for her expertise. She deserved it. Within 3 months, our client satisfaction scores were back to their previous levels. Within 6 months, we'd brought in $67 million in new business, the highest growth quarter in company history. 7 months later, I'm still at Pinnacle Financial. I'm still VP of Commercial Accounts. My team has grown from 15 people to 23. Our client portfolio has expanded from 247 accounts to 312. Our retention rate is 98.1%, higher than it's ever been. I think about those 6 months a lot. The Sunday night emails, the excluded meetings, the false accusations, the public humiliation, the systematic dismantling of everything I'd built. I think about how close I came to quitting. How many times I wanted to just walk away, find another job, start over somewhere else where I wouldn't have to fight every day. But I didn't, because I knew I was right. And I had evidence. That's the thing about quiet firing. It relies on the victim not fighting back. It relies on people being too tired, too demoralized, too afraid to document what's happening. It relies on people accepting the narrative that they're the problem, that they're not good enough, that they deserve what's happening to them. But when you document everything, every email, every conversation, every excluded meeting, every false accusation, every impossible standard, you take away their power. You turn their weapon against them. Trevor thought he could erase me. He thought he could make me disappear without consequences, without anyone noticing or caring. He was wrong. If you've ever felt like you were being pushed out of a job you'd earned, if you've ever been excluded, undermined, gaslit, or quietly fired, I hope my story gives you something. Maybe it's courage. Maybe it's validation. Maybe it's just the knowledge that you're not crazy, that what's happening to you is real, and that you have the power to fight back. And if you found something valuable in this story, please like and subscribe for more real stories about workplace politics, corporate manipulation, and what happens when you refuse to be erased. I post new stories every week about the reality of corporate life, the good, the bad, and the battles we fight to protect our careers and our dignity. Remember, document everything. Every email, every conversation, every excluded meeting, every false accusation, every witness, every piece of evidence. Because when the time comes to fight back, evidence is the only thing that matters. Your word against theirs means nothing. Your word plus 6 months of meticulous documentation means everything. Thanks for listening. I'll see you next week.